My name is Martin Hale, and I was 68 years old on the day I had waited half my life to see. After 40 years of teaching at the same small-town school, the city council had decided to honor me with a Lifetime Service Award. It wasn't about the shiny plaque or the applause. It was about knowing that all those early mornings, late nights, and missed weekends had meant something. There was only one person I wanted sitting in the front row. My son. His name was Ethan. 3 weeks before the ceremony, I called him with excitement I hadn't felt in years. "I'd really like you to be there," I said. "It would mean a lot." He paused for a second before answering. "I'll try, Dad. Work's been busy." That wasn't a yes. Still, I smiled and told myself he would come. A father learns to hold on to hope even when it gets smaller every year. The morning of the ceremony, I woke before sunrise. My old navy blue suit had been hanging on the closet door for days. My late wife, Nora, had bought it for our 25th wedding anniversary. She used to laugh and say I looked like someone important whenever I wore it. As I buttoned the jacket, I caught myself looking toward the bedroom door, almost expecting her to tease me again. The house answered with silence. She had been gone for 6 years. Sometimes I still reached for the second coffee mug before remembering there was no one left to drink from it. Before leaving, I placed a small framed photo of Nora back on the shelf after wiping away a little dust. "I wish you were coming with me," I whispered. The school auditorium buzzed with cheerful voices. Former students waved from across the room. Parents I hadn't seen in decades came over to shake my hand. Some even introduced me to their children, saying, "This is the teacher who believed in me when nobody else did." Their words warmed my heart. But every few minutes, my eyes drifted toward the entrance. No Ethan. The ceremony hadn't started yet. He still had time. I checked my phone. No messages. No missed calls. The principal, Mrs. Brooks, leaned close. "Your family here yet?" I forced a smile. "They're probably parking." It was easier than telling the truth. As guests settled into their seats, I noticed one chair in the front row stayed empty. The chair with Ethan's name on it. My hands suddenly felt colder. The mayor stepped onto the stage and welcomed everyone. Applause filled the room. I tried clapping too, but my attention stayed fixed on the auditorium doors. Every time they opened, my heart jumped. Each time, someone else walked in. A young couple. An elderly neighbor. 3 teenagers laughing. Not Ethan. When my name was finally announced, everyone stood and applauded. I walked toward the stage, smiling because that was what people expected. Inside, though, every step felt heavier than the last. As I accepted the award, flashes from cameras lit the room. The mayor shook my hand. "You've changed thousands of lives, Martin." I thanked him quietly. Then he asked the question I had been trying to avoid. "And where's your family today?" For one painful second, I couldn't answer. Before I could think of an excuse, a familiar voice called from the back of the room. "Right here." Everyone turned. A tall man hurried down the aisle carrying a bouquet of white lilies. It was Lucas Bennett. I hadn't seen him in nearly 15 years. He stopped in front of the stage, slightly out of breath. "I'm sorry I'm late." I stared at him in complete surprise. Lucas smiled the same warm smile his father used to wear. His father. Daniel Bennett. My best friend. The man who had saved my life during a terrible highway accident 30 years ago. Daniel had passed away a decade earlier. Lucas held out the flowers. "My dad asked me to do something before he died," he said softly. "He told me that if there ever came a day when you stood alone, I should stand beside you." The entire room fell silent. I couldn't speak. Lucas stepped onto the stage and stood next to me as if he had always belonged there. The cameras kept flashing. People smiled through tears. But deep inside me, one question grew louder than the applause. Why had my own son stayed away? While my best friend's son had crossed 3 states just to keep an old promise? I wouldn't learn the answer until later that evening. And when I did, everything I believed about my family would begin to change. For a few long seconds, nobody moved. Lucas stood beside me with the bouquet in his hands, looking almost embarrassed by the attention. The white lilies reminded me of the flowers people had brought to Daniel's funeral 10 years earlier. Back then, I had promised myself I would stay close to his family. Life had become busy, grief had become quiet, and the years had slipped away faster than I ever imagined. I reached for the flowers with trembling hands. "You came all this way?" I asked. Lucas nodded. "Almost 8 hours by car." "You didn't have to." "I know," he replied gently. "I wanted to." The room stayed silent until the mayor cleared his throat. "I think," he said with a warm smile, "this young man deserves a round of applause too." The audience stood again. This applause sounded different. It wasn't for awards or speeches. It was for loyalty. I glanced toward the empty chair with Ethan's name still taped neatly across the back. Somehow, it looked even emptier now that someone else had chosen to stand beside me. Mrs. Brooks stepped to the microphone. "Martin has always taught us that kindness is measured by actions, not words. I think today we've all been reminded of that." People wiped tears from their eyes. I tried to smile, but it was becoming harder to keep my thoughts together. When the ceremony ended, dozens of former students surrounded me. "You changed my life. You stayed after school to help me pass math. You came to my mom's hospital when I was scared." Each memory filled me with pride. Yet every congratulations was followed by the same question. "Where's your son?" I answered differently each time. "He got delayed. Something came up. He's probably still driving." The lies became smaller and weaker with every sentence. Lucas never corrected anyone. He simply stayed nearby, greeting people politely while giving me enough space to breathe. After nearly an hour, the crowd slowly disappeared. The auditorium became quiet except for workers' folding chairs. Lucas picked up the award plaque before I could. "I'll carry this." "You've already done enough." He smiled. "My dad used to say you were too stubborn to accept help." I laughed for the first time that day. That does sound like Daniel. Outside, the evening air felt cooler than I expected. Clouds drifted across the orange sky as we walked toward the parking lot. Lucas placed the plaque carefully in the back seat of my old sedan. "Are you still driving this car?" he asked. "It refuses to quit." He grinned. "Just like you." For a moment, everything felt almost normal. Then my phone buzzed. My heart jumped. "Ethan." I answered immediately. "Hello?" His voice sounded rushed. "Oh. Dad." I waited. "I completely forgot today was your ceremony." The words landed harder than any insult could have. Forgot. Not delayed. Not caught in traffic. Not sick. Forgot. Around us, cars continued pulling out of the parking lot. Someone laughed nearby. A child chased a balloon across the sidewalk. The whole world kept moving while mine seemed to stop. "You forgot?" I repeated quietly. "I've had 3 big projects this week. Things have been crazy." I looked down at the bouquet Lucas had brought. 8 hours on the road. 1 forgotten promise. The difference between those 2 things suddenly felt impossible to ignore. "I called you 3 weeks ago." "I know. You put it on your calendar." "I thought I did." Silence stretched between us. Finally Ethan sighed. "Look, Dad. It's just an award. Just an award." Those 3 words carried 40 years of work, thousands of students, countless evenings spent grading papers instead of resting. They also carried every soccer game of Ethan's I had never missed. Every birthday cake I had stayed up baking after Nora worked late. Every parent meeting I attended. Every scraped knee I had bandaged. Every nightmare I had sat beside until morning. To him, it was just an award. Lucas quietly stepped farther away, pretending to admire the flowers planted beside the parking lot. He was giving me privacy. My own son wasn't. "Ethan," I said carefully, "your mother would have been here." He didn't answer. After several seconds he spoke again. "I'll come by this weekend, okay? We'll celebrate then." I realized he wasn't apologizing. He was scheduling. As though missing one of the biggest days of my life was no different than postponing lunch. "You don't have to." "What do you mean?" I said, "You don't have to." Before he could reply, I ended the call. My hand shook so badly that I almost dropped the phone. Lucas walked back slowly. "You okay?" I slipped the phone into my pocket. "I think." I paused, searching for words that wouldn't come. I think I finally stopped making excuses for someone. Lucas didn't ask what had happened. He simply nodded. My dad used to tell me something after people disappointed him. What was that? He'd say, "When someone shows you where you stand in their life, believe them the first time." I looked toward the empty road. Daniel had always known how to say the difficult truths with kindness. Lucas had inherited that gift. As we prepared to leave, an older woman hurried out of the auditorium. "Mr. Hale." It was Sandra, the school secretary. I almost forgot. "Someone left this for you." She handed me a plain brown envelope with no return address. Only 3 handwritten words appeared on the front. "For Martin. Alone." It felt heavier than paper should. "What is it?" Lucas asked. "I don't know." I turned the envelope over. The seal had already been broken. Someone had opened it once before, and then carefully closed it again. A strange feeling settled in my chest. Whatever waited inside had been meant for my eyes. And somehow, I already knew it had something to do with Ethan. I didn't open the envelope in the parking lot. Something about it made me hesitate. It wasn't fear exactly. It felt more like standing outside a room where you already knew bad news was waiting. Lucas noticed my expression. "We can grab a coffee first," he suggested. "No rush." I nodded. There used to be a diner 2 blocks from here. The Maple Corner? I looked at him, surprised. "You know it?" "My dad brought me there after your fishing trips. He said their apple pie could fix almost anything." A small smile escaped before disappearing just as quickly. "I'm not sure pie can fix this." 10 minutes later, we sat in the same booth Daniel and I had shared dozens of times over the years. The place hadn't changed much. The old clock still ticked above the counter. The waitress still called everyone Han. She brought us coffee without asking. "You boys celebrating?" she asked. Lucas pointed toward the plaque leaning against the booth. "Our friend here won an award." She smiled warmly at me. "Congratulations." "Thank you." After she walked away, the silence returned. The envelope rested on the table between us. Lucas didn't touch it. "My dad always hated opening important letters," he said. He'd let them sit on the kitchen table for hours. "Why?" He said unopened letters still held hope. His words stayed with me. "Because once I opened this envelope, there would be no going back." I slowly slipped a finger beneath the flap. Inside were only 2 things. A folded sheet of paper. And a printed screenshot. The screenshot caught my eye first. It showed a group text conversation. At the top was the group name. Family Circle. I frowned. I wasn't part of any family group chat. Lucas watched quietly as I unfolded the paper. It wasn't signed. It simply read, "You deserve to know why your son wasn't there today. Read the screenshot carefully. My stomach tightened. I picked up the printed image. The conversation had taken place 4 days before the ceremony. The first message came from Ethan. Dad keeps reminding me about that school award. A second reply appeared from my daughter-in-law, Melissa. Then just go. It matters to him. My heart softened for a moment. At least someone understood. Then Ethan answered. If I go, he'll think every little event needs to become a family holiday. A few seconds later another message appeared. Besides, he'll never know if I skip it. He forgets things now anyway. I stared at those words until they blurred. He forgets things now. Was that how he saw me? Yes, I sometimes misplaced my reading glasses. Yes, I occasionally forgot where I'd parked the car. But I wasn't confused. I wasn't helpless. I was simply getting older. Lucas looked at me carefully. You don't have to keep reading. I do. The final message came from someone whose name I didn't recognize. Honestly, it's time he starts letting go. You can't organize your life around an old man forever. There were several thumbs-up reactions underneath, including one from Ethan. I lowered the paper. The coffee in front of me had gone cold. So? Lucas said softly. He knew. I nodded once. He knew. The waitress returned with 2 slices of apple pie. Neither of us touched them. After a long silence, I folded the screenshot neatly and placed it back inside the envelope. I don't understand, I whispered. Lucas leaned forward. What don't you understand? I didn't ask him to organize his life around me. My voice cracked. I asked for one afternoon. The words hung between us. One afternoon. 40 years of work. One empty chair. One forgotten father. Lucas looked toward the rain beginning to fall outside the diner window. My dad used to say people don't drift apart all at once. What did he mean? They stop making small choices. He counted quietly on his fingers. They stop calling. They stop visiting. They stop asking how you're doing. Then one day they realize they'd become strangers. His words hurt because they felt true. I thought back over the last few years. It was always me making the calls. Me planning dinners. Me driving across town. Me asking if Ethan wanted to spend a Sunday together. Whenever I stopped trying. Weeks passed without hearing from him. Had I ignored that because I didn't want to face it? My phone buzzed again. A text from Melissa. I'm so sorry. I just found out he never went. Congratulations on your award. You deserved better today. I read it twice. Lucas noticed. From Ethan? No. I showed him the screen. He read the message and handed the phone back. She sounds genuine. I think she is. Another message arrived before I could lock the screen. This one was from Ethan. Please don't be dramatic. We can have dinner Sunday and move on. I felt something inside me grow unexpectedly calm. Not anger. Not sadness. Clarity. For years, I had been afraid that speaking honestly might push my son away. Now I realized something painful. He had already been walking away. I was simply the last person to admit it. As I slipped the phone back into my pocket, the diner door opened. A man wearing a dark delivery jacket stepped inside and looked around the room. Mr. Martin Hale? Yes? He approached our table carrying a small sealed box. I was asked to deliver this to you today. Who sent it? He checked the label. It says, from Daniel Bennett. Deliver only after the ceremony. Lucas's eyes widened. My dad? The delivery man nodded. It looks like he arranged this years ago. Neither of us spoke. Daniel had been gone for a decade. Yet somehow, he had still found a way to reach us both on the very day my own son had chosen not to. The box sat in the middle of the table. None of us reached for it. Lucas kept staring at the label as if reading it again might change what it said. "My dad planned this," he whispered. The delivery driver shrugged. "I've worked for Harper Storage for 6 years. This package was part of a long-term holding service. We were instructed to deliver it only after today's ceremony. That's all I know." He handed me a clipboard. I signed my name without taking my eyes off the box. When the driver left, the diner seemed quieter than before. Even the ticking clock above the counter sounded louder. Lucas finally broke the silence. "My father never mentioned anything like this. He never mentioned it to me either." The box wasn't large. About the size of an old shoebox. Brown paper wrapped carefully around it, with Daniel's neat handwriting across the top. "For Martin. Open only after the day you are finally recognized for everything you've given to others." My throat tightened. "That's exactly how he wrote birthday cards," I murmured. Lucas smiled sadly. He believed timing mattered. I carefully untied the faded string instead of tearing the paper. Inside rested 3 things. An old leather journal. A small velvet pouch. And a sealed envelope with my name written across the front. I picked up the envelope first. The paper had yellowed with age. Inside was a handwritten letter. I recognized Daniel's handwriting instantly. "Dear Martin. If you're reading this, then one of 2 things has happened. Either you finally allowed people to thank you, or you've spent another 20 years pretending you don't deserve it. Knowing you, I'm guessing it's the second one." I couldn't help smiling through damp eyes. Lucas laughed softly. "That sounds exactly like him." I continued reading. "There is something I've wanted to tell you for years, but I knew you would argue with me if I said it while I was alive. You always believed being a good father meant sacrificing quietly. You missed promotions to attend school plays. You repaired your own roof because college tuition came first. You cared for Nora while she was sick without complaining once. You gave until giving became your normal. My friend, one day you'll discover who noticed those sacrifices, and who only expected them." I lowered the page. Daniel had written those words almost 12 years earlier. Yet they described my life perfectly. Lucas leaned closer. "Keep going." I swallowed hard. "If your family stands beside you today, treasure them. If they don't spend the rest of your life chasing people who have stopped turning around. Love is not measured by how hard one person tries. It has to walk both directions." My hands began trembling again. The words echoed painfully against everything that had happened just hours earlier. For years I had believed that if I tried harder, if I called first, if I forgave faster, if I expected less, things would somehow return to what they used to be. Daniel had seen the truth long before I had. I folded the letter carefully. "I wish he'd told me this sooner." Lucas shook his head. "You wouldn't have listened. He wasn't wrong. Back then, I would have defended Ethan. I always had. He doesn't mean it. He's just busy. He's under pressure." Excuse after excuse. Until eventually I couldn't tell the difference between protecting my son and lying to myself. Lucas picked up the leather journal. "Should we look?" I nodded. Most pages contain short entries. Fishing trips. Funny stories. Old photographs tucked between the pages. Halfway through, something slipped onto the table. A photograph. It showed Daniel and me standing beside my old pickup truck. Ethan couldn't have been older than 10. He sat on my shoulders, grinning from ear to ear while holding the biggest fish he'd ever caught. I stared at the picture. I remember that day. Lucas looked over my shoulder. My dad took this. Ethan refused to touch the fish. Lucas laughed. So who caught it? You did. We both laughed. For one beautiful moment, the weight in my chest lifted. Then I noticed something written on the back of the photograph. In Daniel's handwriting. Never forget how proudly he looked at you today. If that ever changes, don't blame yourself forever. Children grow into their own choices. The laughter disappeared. It felt as though Daniel had reached across time and placed a hand on my shoulder. Lucas quietly closed the journal. My father worried about you. I can see that. He used to tell Mom that you loved people deeper than most. I looked toward the rain sliding down the diner windows. Sometimes that's not a gift. No, Lucas admitted. Sometimes it's expensive. The waitress approached carefully. Do you boys need anything? I looked at the untouched pie. Could you wrap these? Of course. As she carried the plates away, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a message. It was Ethan calling. I let it ring. Lucas glanced at the screen but said nothing. The call ended. A few seconds later, it rang again. Then again. Finally, a voicemail notification appeared. I pressed play. Dad. Melissa showed me that message she sent you. Look. I think she's making this into something bigger than it is. I said I forgot. I admitted it. I don't know what else you want from me. His voice paused. Then he added something that settled over me like cold rain. And whoever's filling your head with ideas needs to stop. I looked up at Lucas. He had heard every word. Neither of us spoke. Because for the first time, it wasn't just that Ethan had missed the ceremony. He truly believed the problem wasn't what he had done. The problem, in his mind, was that someone had made me notice it. And as I slipped the phone back into my pocket, another realization quietly took its place. If Ethan thought today was only about a forgotten ceremony, he had no idea what was waiting inside the velvet pouch Daniel had left behind. The velvet pouch felt surprisingly heavy for its size. Lucas watched as I loosened the faded drawstring. What do you think it is? He asked. I have no idea. I turned the pouch upside down over the table. A brass key slid out first. Then a folded card. The key was old, its edges worn smooth from years of use. A tiny metal tag hung from it. Locker 214. Nothing else. I unfolded the card. Daniel's handwriting greeted me once again. Martin. If you're holding this key, it means I was right. You finally reached a day when you needed answers more than comfort. Lucas leaned closer. I kept reading. The key belongs to a safe deposit locker at Franklin Community Bank. Inside is something I promised to protect until the time was right. A promise is only valuable if someone keeps it. I frowned. A bank locker? Lucas looked just as confused. My dad never had much money. This doesn't sound like money. No. He was right. It sounded like a secret. I turned the card over. At the bottom, Daniel had added one final sentence. Don't go alone. Lucas met my eyes. I guess he meant me. I think he did. The rain had stopped by the time we left the diner. The streets glistened under the evening lights, reflecting red brake lights and glowing shop windows. The town looked peaceful. My mind wasn't. Every few minutes I replayed Ethan's voicemail. Whoever's filling your head with ideas? No one had filled my head. For the first time in years, I had simply listened to my own heart. As Lucas drove behind me toward my house, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Melissa. I answered. Hello? Her voice sounded tense. Martin, are you home? Not yet. Can we talk before Sunday? Something in her tone made me pull my car into a quiet parking lot. "What's wrong?" She hesitated. "I don't want Ethan to know I'm calling." My grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Go on. I've tried to get him to spend more time with you." "I know." "No. I don't think you do." There was another pause. "He gets angry every time I bring it up." I looked through the windshield as Lucas parked a few spaces away, giving me privacy again. "He says," Melissa continued slowly, "he says you always make him feel guilty." "Guilty? For not visiting. For calling late. For being busy." I closed my eyes. "I've never asked him for anything except time." "I know." Her voice cracked. "I've told him that. So why are you telling me this now?" "Because today scared me." I didn't answer. She continued. "When he came home from work, I asked why he wasn't at your ceremony. And he honestly thought it wasn't important." The words hurt, but not as sharply as before. Pain changes after a while. First it burns. Then it settles into something quieter. Something heavier. Melissa sighed. "I showed him the message I sent you. He wasn't happy." "No. What happened?" "He said I embarrassed him." I looked down at Daniel's key resting on the passenger seat. "I think he embarrassed himself." For several seconds neither of us spoke. Finally Melissa whispered something that caught me completely off guard. "Martin, has Ethan ever asked you for money recently?" I blinked. "No. None. Not for years." Another silence. Then she said quietly, "I think he's hiding something." Before I could ask another question, someone called her name in the background. "I have to go." "Melissa. We'll talk soon." The call ended. By the time I reached home, darkness had settled across the neighborhood. Lucas stood beside me as I unlocked the front door. "I should probably get a hotel." "You'll stay here." "I don't want to impose." I smiled faintly. "My guest room hasn't had company in years." He nodded. "I'd like that." Inside, the house smelled exactly as it always had. Old books. Fresh coffee. A hint of cedar from the hallway closet. Lucas stopped in front of the family photographs lining the wall. One picture caught his attention. Nora stood in the garden laughing while Ethan, about 12 years old, sprayed her with the hose. They looked happy. They were. Were you? I thought about the question. I was busy. He turned toward me. That's not what I asked. I looked back at the photograph. I confused providing for my family with knowing my family. Lucas didn't interrupt. I worked overtime when Ethan wanted expensive soccer camps. I fixed everything around the house myself. I never let him see how worried I was about bills. I smiled sadly. I thought protecting him meant carrying every burden alone. Lucas folded his arms. My dad did that too. It didn't work very well for either of us. No. A floorboard creaked upstairs. We both froze. I frowned. I don't remember leaving any windows open. Lucas looked toward the staircase. Could someone be here? I wasn't expecting anyone. Slowly, I walked to the hall closet and picked up the old wooden baseball bat I'd kept since Ethan played Little League. The house was silent. One careful step at a time, we climbed the stairs. Halfway up, another sound echoed through the hallway. A drawer closing. Lucas whispered. Someone's up there. I pushed open my bedroom door. Empty. The bathroom. Empty. Then we reached Ethan's old bedroom. The door stood slightly open. A thin line of light stretched across the floor. I tightened my grip on the bat. With one slow breath, I pushed the door open. Someone was standing beside the old bookshelf. They turned toward us in surprise. It wasn't a stranger. It was Melissa. She looked frightened. And in her hands was a thick folder stuffed with papers. "I didn't know how else to tell you," she said, her voice shaking. "You need to see what Ethan has been hiding." For a moment, none of us spoke. Melissa stood frozen beside Ethan's old bookshelf, clutching the folder so tightly the edges had bent beneath her fingers. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying before she ever stepped inside the house. I slowly lowered the baseball bat. "Melissa?" "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know this looks terrible." Lucas glanced at me. "I'll wait outside if you..." "No," Melissa interrupted. "You should hear this too." She looked from Lucas to me, then took a shaky breath. "I've been trying to tell Ethan the truth for months. Every conversation ends in a fight." I leaned against the bedroom doorframe. "Start from the beginning." She nodded. "You remember when Ethan said his company cut bonuses last year?" "Yes." "That wasn't true." I frowned. "He never lost his bonus." "No. He quit." The room suddenly felt smaller. "He quit?" Melissa nodded. 8 months ago. "But he told me the company was restructuring." "He lied." I searched my memory. Every phone call. Every excuse. Every cancelled visit. Every rushed goodbye. How much of it had been real? Why would he lie about that? I asked quietly. He wanted to start his own business. That's not something he needed to hide. No, she agreed. But the way he financed it was. She placed the folder on Ethan's old desk. I found these by accident. Inside were neatly organized papers. Bank statements. Loan agreements. Credit card bills. I picked up the first document. The balance alone made my stomach tighten. Nearly $160,000 in debt. I looked at Melissa. This can't be right. I wish it wasn't. Lucas slowly sat down on the edge of the bed. How did it get this bad? Melissa rubbed her forehead. He believed one big investment would solve everything. What investment? A chain of sports training centers. I blinked. Ethan never mentioned any of this. He didn't want anyone questioning him. Page after page told the same story. Loans. Missed payments. Interest piling higher every month. Then another document caught my attention. It wasn't from a bank. It was from a financial planning company. Across the top, highlighted in yellow, were the words. Projected family assets. My name appeared halfway down the page. So did my house. My savings. My retirement account. For a moment, I couldn't understand what I was looking at. Then I noticed a handwritten note in the margin. Potential inheritance available within 5 to 10 years. The words stole the air from my lungs. Lucas stood up. What is it? I handed him the paper. His face hardened as he read it. Melissa quietly covered her eyes. I found that 2 weeks ago. I looked at her. He was planning around my death? Tears rolled down her cheeks. I asked him the same question. The silence that followed was unbearable. Finally, I managed to ask. What did he say? She swallowed. He told me it wasn't personal. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because I couldn't believe those words existed. Not personal. Someone had calculated the value of my life as though I were a number on a spreadsheet. Melissa continued. He said financial planners ask people to estimate future inheritances. I looked back at the document. This isn't an estimate. No. It's a plan. She nodded. I know. I slowly sat down in the old desk chair Ethan had used as a teenager. The walls were still covered with faded soccer posters. A dusty trophy rested on the shelf. I remembered cheering louder than anyone when he won it. I remembered driving 3 hours to every tournament. Packing lunches. Fixing torn cleats with glue because money had been tight. I had never regretted any of it. Not once. Until now. Lucas broke the silence. Did Ethan ever ask you for money? Melissa shook her head. He knew you would ask questions. So he avoided me. He avoided honesty. I closed the folder. When did you decide to bring this here? After today's ceremony. Why today? She looked directly at me. Because when he came home this afternoon, he wasn't upset that he'd hurt you. She paused. He was upset because people at work had seen photos online. I frowned. What photos? She pulled out her phone. Someone from the ceremony had posted pictures on social media. One showed Lucas standing beside me as I accepted the award. Another captured the moment he handed me the bouquet. Thousands of people had already viewed them. The comments kept coming. Beautiful friendship. This young man honored his father's promise. Where was Mr. Hale's family? One comment had hundreds of likes. Sometimes the people who share your blood aren't the people who stand beside you. My chest tightened. Melissa looked down. Ethan spent an hour reading those comments. And he kept saying people would think he was a bad son. Lucas quietly folded his arms. Instead of asking whether he had been one. Melissa nodded once. Exactly. Another heavy silence filled the room. Then she reached into the folder one last time. I almost didn't bring this. She handed me a single folded receipt. It was dated 3 weeks earlier. The same day I had called Ethan about the ceremony. The receipt showed a reservation. Not for work. Not for a business meeting. For 2 front-row tickets to a professional baseball game in another city. The game had started at the same time as my award ceremony. I stared at the date. At the time. Ethan's name printed clearly beneath the reservation. He hadn't forgotten. He had chosen. And suddenly, every excuse he had ever given me over the past few years began to collapse under the weight of that single piece of paper. No one spoke. The receipt rested in my hands like it weighed 100 pounds. 3 weeks earlier, I had called Ethan with excitement I hadn't felt in years. I'd really like you to be there. He had answered, I'll try, Dad. That same afternoon, he had bought 2 tickets to a baseball game 300 miles away. Not because he forgot. Because he had already decided. I carefully placed the receipt back on the desk. I kept making excuses for him, I said quietly. Melissa's eyes filled with tears. So did I. Lucas looked toward the window. Rain had started again, tapping softly against the glass. What are you going to do? He asked. I didn't answer right away. For years, whenever Ethan disappointed me, I found a way to protect him from criticism, from consequences, sometimes even from himself. But Daniel's letter echoed in my mind. Love is not measured by how hard one person tries. It had taken me almost 70 years to understand that. I think, I finally said, I'm going to stop pretending. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. For the first time in a long while, I didn't reach for my phone to see if Ethan had called. I already knew he hadn't. Instead, I made coffee. Lucas was already awake, sitting on the back porch with Daniel's journal resting on his lap. Couldn't sleep? I asked. He smiled faintly. I was reading Dad's notes. He handed me the journal. A bookmark rested halfway through. I think you should see this page. I looked down. The entry was dated nearly 15 years earlier. Martin worries too much about disappointing Ethan. He never notices that he's the only one worried. One-sided love can survive for years. Respect can't. I closed the journal slowly. He really saw everything. Lucas nodded. My father listened more than he talked. He certainly did. The smell of fresh rain drifted through the yard. Nora had loved mornings like this. She used to sit on this very porch, wrapped in a blanket, holding warm coffee with both hands. For a moment, I imagined her sitting in the empty chair beside me. She would have known exactly what to say. She always did. At 9 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Melissa stood on the porch alone. She looked exhausted. I told Ethan where I was last night. I stepped aside. Come in. Lucas quietly moved into the kitchen, giving us privacy. Melissa remained standing. He knows I showed you everything. I assumed he would. He was furious. I wasn't surprised. What did he say? She let out a bitter laugh. He asked how I could betray him. Betray? I asked him the same question. She shook her head. He said married couples are supposed to protect each other. And what did you tell him? I told him protecting someone isn't the same as helping them lie. For the first time since I'd met her, I saw something different in Melissa. Not fear. Strength. He left the house this morning, she continued. He said he was coming here. I glanced toward the clock. What time? About 30 minutes ago. Before I could answer, a car pulled into the driveway. Lucas looked through the front window. I guess that's him. The engine shut off. Nobody got out immediately. Finally, Ethan stepped onto the driveway. He looked tired. His shirt was wrinkled. His hair hadn't been combed. He stood beside his car for several seconds, staring at the house where he'd grown up. This is the first time he's been here in almost 5 months, I said quietly. Melissa lowered her eyes. I know. A slow knock echoed through the hallway. 3 gentle taps. Not confident. Not angry. Almost uncertain. I walked to the front door. When I opened it, Ethan forced a small smile. Hi, Dad. Hello, Ethan. His eyes moved past me. Melissa. Lucas. The folder on the dining table. His expression changed instantly. What is he doing here? Ethan asked, pointing at Lucas. Lucas answered before I could. My father loved yours. Ethan frowned. What does that have to do with anything? Lucas didn't raise his voice. It means I came when your father needed someone. The words hung heavily between them. Ethan looked back at me. So, this is what we're doing now? What do you mean? You've turned everyone against me. I stared at him in disbelief. No, Ethan. I stepped aside, leaving the front door open. You should come inside. He entered cautiously. His eyes landed on the receipt. Then the bank statements. Then the inheritance projection. The color drained from his face. Melissa folded her arms. You didn't think I'd find them. He looked at her. You went through my office? I was looking for our tax papers. You had no right. She laughed sadly. No right? Her voice remained calm, but every word carried years of disappointment. I've spent months wondering why you couldn't sleep. I've watched debt collectors call our house. I've listened while you lied to your father. And you're worried about privacy? Ethan rubbed both hands across his face. You don't understand. Then explain, I said. He looked at me. For the first time since arriving, he finally seemed to notice the hurt in my face. I wasn't waiting for you to die. I didn't answer. I was just planning. I slowly picked up the inheritance document. This paper estimates how much my death would solve your financial problems. It wasn't supposed to mean that. Then what was it supposed to mean? He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The silence lasted so long that even the ticking clock seemed unbearably loud. Finally, Ethan whispered. I got in over my head. I can see that. I thought if I could keep everything together for a few more years. His voice broke. I could fix it before anyone knew. I looked into my son's eyes. For the first time in years, I didn't see confidence. I saw fear. Real fear. But one question still remained. A question I could no longer ignore. If all of this is true, I asked quietly, then tell me one thing. Ethan looked up. Why did you choose a baseball game over one afternoon with your father? He closed his eyes. When he finally answered, his words revealed a truth that hurt even more than the lie. Because I didn't think you'd still be there when I was finally ready to make things right. His words settled over the room like heavy fog. I didn't think you'd still be there when I was finally ready to make things right. No one interrupted the silence. Outside, the rain continued falling, soft enough to be calming, yet steady enough to remind us it wasn't ending anytime soon. I looked at my son for a long time. Not the businessman drowning in debt. Not the man who had missed my ceremony. I saw the little boy who used to run into my arms after every soccer game, certain I would always be waiting. Somewhere along the way, we had both started believing there would always be another tomorrow. There it is, I said quietly. Ethan frowned. What? The truth. He looked confused. You weren't planning to make things right. I was. No. I shook my head gently. You were planning to wait until it was convenient. His shoulders slumped. I thought there'd be time. So did I. Those 3 words carried more weight than anger ever could. For the first time since arriving, Ethan couldn't meet my eyes. Lucas quietly stood. I think this part belongs to your family. He picked up Daniel's journal. I'll be on the porch. As he passed Ethan, he paused. My father once told me something. Ethan looked up. He said love isn't something you store for later. Then Lucas walked outside, closing the door softly behind him. Melissa remained standing beside the dining table. She wasn't crying anymore. She looked tired. I'm very tired. I've asked him for months to slow down, she said. I told him money wasn't worth losing people. She looked at Ethan. But every problem became another reason to work more. Ethan rubbed his forehead. I was trying to save everything. You were trying to save the business, she answered. Our marriage. She stopped. Our family. Another pause. Your father. You kept saying those could wait. The room became painfully quiet. I walked to the living room bookshelf. On the top shelf sat an old wooden box Nora had loved. Inside were birthday cards, school drawings, and family photographs. I carried it back to the table. Ethan watched without speaking. I opened the box. Near the bottom lay a folded piece of construction paper. The edges were worn. I handed it to him. He unfolded it slowly. A child's handwriting filled the page. My hero. The paper was from 2nd grade. Underneath the title were crooked pencil sentences. My dad is my hero because he comes to every game. He fixes everything. When I grow up I want to be just like him. Ethan stopped reading. His lips trembled. I forgot about this. I didn't. I kept every drawing you ever made. He stared at the paper. I even kept the ones where your stick figures looked more like potatoes than people. A weak laugh escaped him before disappearing into tears. He sat down heavily. I don't know when I changed. You didn't change in one day. I pulled out the chair across from him. It happened one choice at a time. He nodded slowly. I know. No. I spoke gently. I don't think you do. He looked up. Missing the ceremony hurts. I placed the baseball ticket receipt beside the school drawing. But this. I touched the inheritance projection. This tells me you have already started seeing me as tomorrow's problem instead of today's father. His face crumpled. I never wanted you dead. I believe you. He looked surprised. I do believe you. I took a slow breath. But believing that doesn't erase what your choices said. Melissa quietly slid her wedding ring off her finger. She placed it on the table. I'm staying with my sister for a while. Ethan stared at the ring. What? I need space. Melissa. I've defended you for years. She wiped away a tear. I defended your late nights. I defended your stress. I defended your silence. She looked directly at him. But I can't defend someone who keeps choosing tomorrow over the people standing in front of him. The words landed harder than shouting ever could. She picked up her coat. Before leaving, she hugged me. I'm sorry today became even harder. I hugged her back. So am I. She walked out the front door. Neither Ethan nor I tried to stop her. Several minutes passed. Finally, Ethan spoke. What happens now? I looked toward the hallway where my award still leaned against the wall. Yesterday, I would have answered differently. Yesterday, I would have rushed to fix everything. Today? I don't know. He swallowed. Are you giving up on me? The question broke my heart. No. I answered honestly. I'm giving up on pretending. He looked down. I've spent years chasing after you. I folded Daniel's letter and slipped it back into its envelope. I'm tired, Ethan. I know. No. I shook my head. I don't mean physically. He understood. For the first time, he truly understood. Tears rolled freely down his face. I'm sorry. I know you are. I'll change. I hope you do. He waited. I continued. But not because you're afraid of losing me. He frowned. Change because you've finally seen yourself. A soft knock interrupted us. Lucas stepped back inside. The bank manager called. I looked up. You called already? He nodded. I left a message while you two were talking. And? He found the record for locker 214. My heartbeat quickened. The locker still exists. He smiled gently. And there's one more surprise. What surprise? Lucas held up his phone. The manager said Daniel left instructions that if the locker was ever opened. He paused, reading the message carefully. Everyone named in the documents must be present. I frowned. Everyone? Lucas nodded. You. Me. He looked toward Ethan. And your son. The room fell silent once more. Whatever Daniel had protected for more than a decade. It wasn't meant to heal only the past. It was about deciding the future of our family. Before you go, I want to ask you something. If you were Martin, after discovering that your own son had chosen a baseball game over one of the most important days of your life and had even planned his future around an inheritance you were still alive to earn, would you have confronted him immediately, or would you have stepped back and given him time to reveal the truth on his own? And if you were Ethan, when should he have admitted his mistakes? When he first skipped the ceremony, when he began hiding his financial troubles, when he realized his father was making excuses for him, or only after everything he had built started falling apart? What about Melissa? After standing by her husband through months of lies, debt, and broken promises, do you think she was right to finally tell Martin the truth, even though it meant exposing her own husband? Or should she have stayed silent and kept trying to protect her marriage? And finally, what about Lucas? He wasn't family by blood, yet he traveled across 3 states to keep a promise his late father had made years before. Do you think real family is defined by blood, or by the people who choose to stand beside us when we need them most? Share your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely love to know what you would have done if you were in their place. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more emotional family stories about broken trust, difficult choices, hidden secrets, loyalty, forgiveness, second chances, and the powerful lessons that remind us that while love may be given freely, trust, respect, and showing up for the people who matter are what truly keep a family together. The end.